Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whisky. My name's Vin PF, and on today's episode we're checking out the Ardray Blended Scotch Whisky. Now, massive thanks to the guys at Ardray for sending this over to me for review. We'll get into it right away because I think this is a really interesting whisky. Not only is it a stunning looking one, I don't often talk about the bottles and whatnot, but I really love this kind of like, I don't know, this texture that they have in this bottle. It's really distinctive. Now, I probably like you guys would be guilty of kind of passing this over because blended Scotch doesn't have the best track record in history. You know, I personally try to be an advocate of it as much as I can be, but there are a lot of, even right now, whiskies that are not that great being released with the word blended on them. Now, this aim of this release is to kind of break through that a little bit and to show you what a conglomerate can make if they use the right stock. Now, this is a product of Beam Suntory and the Edrington Group, so Beam Suntory Edrington as it is in this country. If you know your distilleries, you'll know there's quite a lot of really famous whiskey producers that go into that. This is allegedly malt and grain. Not entirely sure where the grain comes from in that portfolio, but if you're thinking about things like, you know, Auchentoshan, Laphroaig, Highland Park, Macallan, Glenrothes, Bamore, you know, they've got so much they can pick from and more than that as well. So they might have extended their reach a little bit, but I imagine they've stuck within their houses and produced something quite tasty. Now, I don't know much about the wood profile on this. It's quite secretive. I probably could have delved into the company a little bit more and found out, but to be honest with you, I think part of it is the kind of the not knowing, the guessing, seeing what you can pick out of it. Because if you're like me, you'll know and love a lot of these distilleries, and I quite like not knowing sometimes. You know, it's like the SMWS when you're looking at them bottles. Sometimes I like not knowing what the numbers mean. But yeah, so it's 48%, which is great. It's about 50 quid, which is great. You know, 55 quid in the UK. Some might see that as expensive, but when we get into the tasting notes, you'll see it's probably not too bad. Let's get into it then. I'm pretty sure, actually, a quick double check. I'm not sure if this says anything about colour or whatnot. Not sure is the truth on that one. Probably could check the box. The box, I don't tend to do boxes on the screen anymore. I used to do them next to it, but now that I've got this little pedestal, I don't really bother. A quick scan. I don't think we have the words on here. So it may well be, it might not be. Doesn't matter. It's not on the box, so we'll move on. Let's get onto the nose then. It's got a beautiful nose, and it's, as we'll get into on the palate as well. You know, tasting notes written previously. It's there's a lot to unpick with this, and I think that your mood, your day, what you've eaten for dinner, whatever, as with all whiskey, will change what you get from this. For me, you know, classics, vanillas, blah, blah, blah. There's a waft of smoke in this one, which I'm happy about. Apples, pears, you know, there's orchard fruits. A little bit of hedgerow even. Some baked goods. There's a lot. Let's try on the palate. Yeah, I mean, again, tasty notes straight from the nose, directly transferring across to the palate. You know, it's up and down. It's sweet. It's got, the only thing I'm not really getting off this at all is any kind of sherry elements to it, or at least heavy ones. They might be mingling in there somewhere, but that's kind of the point of this whiskey, I think, is that it's got so many layers, and it seems like on paper it might be a bit too much, but it's never too much. You might get, throughout the kind of like the tasting experience, you might get one tasting note being the kind of like the kind of key musician of that moment, where you might pick out something and go, oh, okay, I'm getting the smoky element to it, or I'm getting the bourbon element to it, or I'm getting the grain element to it. They all kind of like peak and trough and kind of like show themselves at one point or another, and yet somehow, despite me saying that, it's all mingled in really, really well. You sort of, it's up to your focus to kind of laser in on those tasting notes. I would wager that a room full of 20 people every single person would get something different off of this. a strong wager, I know. I haven't tested that hypothesis at all anywhere. Just on my own personal... I basically didn't write tasting notes for this dram. Cards on the table. I wrote down a few key facts and information, but every time I tasted this whiskey, I got something different. So it seemed kind of pointless to write the tasting notes and just to talk about that instead, because that's what your price of entry is for this. You know, you're buying the dram, but I think what you're going to get is an evolving dram that's going to taste different from here than it does to here, to here, to here, to here. It's going to taste different depending on how long you've left it in the glass for. It's going to taste different depending on who you're with, what you've drank before, what you've smoked, whatever. All these things, it's just going to be something different every single time. And for me, that is why basically everybody should have a look at it, because it's just one of those ones I don't really tend to... It's not really a guard whiskey. 50 quid, we're probably getting to that point now where 50 quid stops being the max and starts being the minimum. But yeah, 50 quid probably a little bit expensive for an everyday guard whiskey. But this would be the one that if I was going to go around to someone who was relatively new to whiskey, or even people that were into it, this is the one I would take with me for us to try throughout the evening, I think, for a general sipping throughout the evening, see what we got. Hopefully that's interested you guys, because it's not a very good review. You know, in terms of like, there's no tasting notes there. It's just I'm enjoying it. Probably you should check it out, which is where we're at with it. But that's where we are. Hopefully you'd be into it too. Let me know in the comments below if you've tried this or bought a bottle. Maybe you disagree, maybe you don't. Maybe it's the worst whiskey you've ever tried, maybe it's the best. Again, I think that's all part of what this whiskey is trying to do. But in any case, I'll say cheers to you, and I'll see you again on another video soon.